Hi there, welcome to Education Cafe Canada. My name is Shari and I'm a retired special education teacher and guidance counselor. So today on the menu, choosing that first career, those first steps out of school, or especially out of high school. Have you ever sat there thinking, what am I supposed to do for the rest of my life? How do I choose a career I'm going to do forever? No pressure, right? Actually, the good news is you're not choosing for the rest of your life. You are choosing the next step. So today, I'm going to walk you through some simple, actually doable ways to figure out where you want to start. So pull up a seat and let's get started. Okay, so I want you to think of your first career the same way you would think about buying your first car. You're not planning to drive that for 50 years, and chances are you're not going to be in the same career for 50 years. Most people do not stay with the company forever. That's really rare. I mean, go back to your grandparents' era, maybe then, but certainly not now. So instead of asking, what do I want to do for the rest of my life? Try asking, what direction do I want to start exploring now? But if you are really confused as to what you might like to do, think back to yourself at 7 years of age. What sort of things interested you? What sort of careers did you want? I mean, I wanted to be either a veterinarian or an actress. And I didn't end up becoming either, but I did teach drama. Oh, I wasn't too far off on that field. Maybe I just got the title wrong. You're saying, remember what I thought about when I was 7? I can't even remember what I had for lunch yesterday. Let's try another avenue. I want you to think about school. What were the subjects that interested you the most? And if you're not quite sure, look where you had the best grades. And we're not talking the ones you felt you should take, but the ones that really engaged you, the ones that you really enjoyed going to class for. Look beyond the obvious as to what careers you might get from those. Instead, think about other fields. Go slightly further adrift. Okay, so let's say you really enjoyed social sciences and helping people. So you might immediately think, oh, I should become a social worker. But that's not the only career in that field. You could also think of going into the clergy. Maybe you're a very religious person as well. Or maybe you want to look at a counseling career, which is not quite the same as social work. You might even decide you want to become a funeral director. I mean, some people find that a little morbid, but there's a lot of counseling. People are very upset when their family members pass away. You could do a lot of good work with grief counseling. So sometimes the less obvious jobs are where your interests really come together. Before you forget, please subscribe. Give us a thumbs up if you think the video is great. And be sure to stay till the end if you want to find out how to evaluate employers. Why not take a career quiz? Remember those quizzes? You may have had them in careers class. My favorite in all of the career quizzes is actually called career cruising. High school students, if that's where you are right now, you can probably access it through your school guidance department. If you're in college, you could go to student services and ask them because a lot of post-secondary institutions have the login codes for that program. And for adults, try your library. Oh, you know I love libraries. A real tip is answer all the questions. And I used to teach a careers course. So I would have my students go through all of them, and then you would end up with about 10 to 20 different careers. And what I want you to do is look at the ones you're not that familiar with, because very often the top of the list is where you're going to find your doctor, lawyer, firefighter, teacher, what have you. But as you're moving further down the list, you might find careers like physiotherapist or occupational therapist, something you have a vague idea about, but you're not fully versed in what they do. And research those careers. So this will take some time. And some of the careers actually have like a day in the life of type videos here on YouTube. So consider looking at that and think, is this something that I could do for a while? because you might really be surprised as to what careers really interest you once you've done some deep diving. Now, what if you don't know anybody in that career field? Well, you might come up with some questions, and you can go onto LinkedIn, and I know I talk a lot about LinkedIn, but it is a valuable resource. You know, maybe there are people who went to your school who are doing it. You might want to put a little filter in, so that way you feel a little bit more comfortable reaching out. Or, you know, just randomly call companies. I can tell you a lot of people have boring days. Not every day, but they'll have a boring day, and suddenly they get a phone call from somebody asking about their career, and that's pretty interesting for them. Now, if you're still really stuck, just talk to people who are in different careers when you are in that store, or when you're in that company. Perhaps you're visiting somebody somewhere, or talking to people's parents, you know, talking to your friends' parents. How did you decide you wanted to be an accountant? How did you decide that you wanted to work in banking? How did you decide you wanted to work in the film industry? And what's it like? You'd be amazed what information you get, and sometimes these small conversations make a huge difference. Now, and if you're really at a loss, you might want to consider doing something for a year. You know, they call it a gap year, but it's not always a gap. You're not always traveling around in India or somewhere. You could decide you're going to go and work for a year until you make a decision. And sometimes you will find people or careers that interest you. It may not be the one that you're in that place, but it may highlight another career that is related to that industry. And sometimes these employers are willing to pay for your university. So that's an added bonus. So the next step is going to, again, to look at websites for different companies that are in the field that's interesting you. And you never know what careers you also might find. Like maybe you're really interested in law or law enforcement. You don't want to go to law school for whatever reason, but you might find out about the role of paralegal, and that might interest you because it does some of the same things a lawyer does, but doesn't do everything that a lawyer does. It has different aspects to it. You may decide you wanted to go into law enforcement, and that way you want to look at researching your local, police. You may look at the RCMP. You might even decide to look into the military or the armed forces. That's totally up to you. But you want to start looking at these different companies and seeing what they offer. Look at the About Us page. Look at what kind of benefits you get working there. Sometimes they will have a little video of somebody who started maybe, in the mailroom and eventually worked up to vice president. You never know. And that can be really beneficial when you're thinking about your career path. And don't forget, you can also review your employer. So you might want to look at something like Glass Ceiling. See what different people who've worked there have said about that organization. Because it could be you think it's absolutely wonderful from its website, but people really do not like working there for whatever reason. So that is something you also want to know because you want to land somewhere that has opportunities for you. And speaking of that, you also want to see if the company promotes from within. Because let's say you decide that you really love working somewhere. You've taken a job out of school and you think this company is absolutely great, and you're gunning for the supervisor's job only to find out they brought somebody in from outside and they're not promoting within their own organization. That is something that can be really upsetting. And it's something you want to know about when you're starting to develop a relationship with an employer. So really, instead of thinking you're choosing your absolute career now, instead think of it as a career playlist. All right? Your first job is the first track. And you're going to add songs, you're going to skip some. You may decide some of them you don't like anymore, wish you'd never recorded or kept. It's not failure. It's about growth. You are expanding your horizons, and you may decide you're going to switch genres if it's a playlist. So you've got to start somewhere. Okay, stay curious, and remember, confidence doesn't come from having it all figured out. It comes from taking action.